diving guide was leading his relatives on a dive, but during the trip, the group became smaller and smaller without the guide noticing. When he finally turned around, he realized that 4 people were missing. He quickly led the remaining people back. When he came out of the water, his heart sank, because out of the 4 who were missing, only 1 had returned. At that moment, their air supply should have already been running very low. The instructor immediately changed to a fresh tank and jumped back into the water to search for them. The Yucatán Peninsula in Mexico is known as a paradise for cave diving enthusiasts, because the longest and the second longest underwater cave systems in the world are both located there. On the surface, this is shown by countless sinkholes, with more than 6,000 in total. The sinkholes are connected by complex passageways, and the water inside eventually flows into the ocean. The water in the sinkholes is clear and transparent, which is why they have gradually become popular tourist destinations. Our story takes place near Tulum, where there is a well-known sinkhole called the Calavera cenote. It is part of the Sac Actun cave system. In the Mayan language, snot means water well, while calavera comes from Spanish and means skull. The cenote has 3 openings, 1 large and 2 small, and together they look like a skull face. Because of this, Calavera is also called the Skull Cenote, or the Temple of Doom. In the past, many human bones were found below, suggesting that during the Mayan civilization, this place may have been a burial site or a place for ritual sacrifices. Today, the bones have been removed, and the site has slowly become a tourist attraction. At this place, you can try cliff jumping, swimming, snorkeling, or cave diving. For cave diving, the site has a planned route that circles around the cenote. The depth of this circular path ranges from about 20 feet to 50 feet. There is a permanent guideline, the light is good, and the overall difficulty is low, which makes it suitable for beginner cave divers or for divers who only have open water experience. However, as we mentioned earlier, the Calavera cenote is part of the Sac Actun cave system, so the tunnels below are all connected. From Calavera, it is possible to swim directly to areas more than 230 miles away, because the entire cave system is about 235 miles long. The caves reach a maximum depth of nearly 390 feet, and if someone goes missing inside, it may be impossible to find them again. This is why leaving the main line is extremely dangerous. Warning signs have been placed at every junction, but some people still choose to ignore them. Because the people involved did not want to reveal their real names, later news reports used pseudonyms, and we will do the same here. Harry and Mary were a Mexican couple who owned a dive shop on the island of Cozumel. In the summer of 1995, they received many calls from foreign tourists who had booked diving trips near Tulum. The couple faced a problem. They were both open water divers with no cave diving experience. However, they did not want to lose the business, so they hired a local cave guide in Tulum. His name was Juan. In reality, although Juan was very familiar with the caves, he also did not have official cave diving qualifications. Why did they still choose him? The answer was simple. He was inexpensive. On August 17, 1995, Harry and Mary met Juan in Tulum, along with 5 tourists, 2 from the Netherlands, 1 from Italy, and 1 from the United States. In the morning, they first dived in another cenote for over an hour, and then they went to the Calavera cenote. There was a ladder at the entrance that could be used to go in and out, but most people preferred to jump straight into the water. Juan was the first to go in, and the others followed. According to the original plan, they would only dive in the main area, which was the circular route. This loop had a radius of about 1,200 feet and a maximum depth of about 50 feet. Many tourists, even experienced divers, would normally stay within this safe range. But Juan had a different idea. He decided to lead the group past the warning signs and deeper into the cave. Inside the cenote, the divers were surrounded by limestone walls and columns, and the scenery was beautiful. But the farther they went, the darker it became, and the water temperature began to drop. At that point, Harry started to feel uneasy. He had no cave diving experience, and he thought it was dangerous to continue blindly into the cave. So, he stopped. He wanted to call out to his wife, Mary, but she had already followed the others farther ahead. Harry decided to turn back alone. After that, he waited near the entrance. Meanwhile, Juan continued leading the 6 remaining divers deeper into the cave. During the whole time, he never once turned around to check the group. Suddenly, their vision began to blur. This was because they had entered the halocline, a layer where fresh water and salt water mix. The Calavera cenote is close to the ocean, so seawater fills the lower part, while fresh water stays on top, much like oil and water. When divers pass through this mixing layer, the light bends and visibility becomes distorted. The sudden blur caused the divers to panic, but Juan did not stop. He kept swimming forward. About 10 minutes later, Juan finally decided to turn back because he realized his air supply was running low. As soon as Juan turned around, he was shocked. Only 3 divers were still behind him, the 2 from the Netherlands and the 1 from Italy. 4 people had disappeared. Realizing the danger, Juan quickly signaled the 3 remaining divers to follow him back. On the return trip, nothing unusual happened, and soon they reached the entrance. Harry was still waiting there. Juan asked him if anyone had come back up, and Harry said no. Without another word, Juan grabbed Harry's tank and immediately went back down to search. The others climbed out of the cenote and called for help. Juan retraced the same path they had just taken, swimming inward again. But all the way to the point where he had turned back earlier, he saw no one. Then, he swam into a lower passage. After only about 5 or 6 minutes, he discovered 2 people, one from the Netherlands and the American diver. Sadly, both of them were already dead. Their tanks were empty and their regulators were floating beside them. Juan did not stop. He kept swimming forward, still searching for the last missing diver, Mary, Harry's wife. A few minutes later, Juan saw a flashing light in the distance. He swam quickly toward it and found Mary. But by then, she had already lost consciousness. She was convulsing, and her regulator had fallen out of her mouth. These signs showed that her air supply had just run out. Juan immediately put his spare regulator in her mouth, but she was no longer breathing. Without hesitation, Juan grabbed her and swam back to the entrance as fast as he could. When they surfaced, Harry helped pull Mary up the ladder. He began performing CPR right away. A few minutes later, an ambulance arrived and rushed her to a nearby hospital. Sadly, it was too late. Mary died at the hospital. That same night, the bodies of the other 2 missing divers were also recovered. Juan and the others were taken to the police station for questioning. The local community was very angry about the accident because Juan's actions had seriously damaged the reputation of their tourism industry. Many people believed that he should at least be charged with involuntary manslaughter. However, only a few days later, Juan was released without any charges. The police later shared their own theory of what had happened. According to their reconstruction, the 8 divers had first swum a full circle along the main loop. Then Juan led them past the warning line and deeper into the cave. Shortly after entering, Harry, feeling afraid, turned back alone. A little later, perhaps Mary realized that her husband was missing, so she decided to turn back to look for him. 2 other divers saw her leave and followed her, not knowing where Juan intended to lead them. When those 3 reached a fork in the cave, they became disoriented. They searched back and forth through the lower passage, unable to find the exit. One by one, their tanks ran out of air. Based on this version of events, if those 3 had simply continued following Juan, they likely would have survived, since the 3 divers who stayed with him all returned safely. In fact, Juan had done this kind of dive before, but that does not mean he was free of responsibility. On the contrary, his responsibility was very serious. He had made several critical mistakes. First, he did not have a cave diving certification. Second, he broke the rule of thirds. When he turned the group around, his air supply was already down to 1/3, while the rule requires turning back when 2/3 of the air is still available. Third, the equipment was inappropriate. All 8 divers were using open water gear, which is not suitable for the complex cave environment. Fourth, there was a lack of training. The guide never looked back to check on the group, while the tourists made unsafe decisions on their own. For example, Harry hired a guide but then chose not to trust him, leaving the group without saying anything, which likely influenced the choices of others. Finally, there was the most serious mistake of all: group size. A single guide should never lead more than 3 divers, meaning that a 4-person team is the maximum safe size. Yet Juan tried to guide 7 people by himself, with no one assigned to the back of the group to watch over safety. Perhaps Juan assumed Harry would take that role, but Harry had already withdrawn. After this tragedy, the Yucatán Peninsula introduced new safety rules and procedures for cave diving. Since then, accidents like this have become rare. This case serves as a reminder to anyone who enjoys cave diving. If you do not yet have the skills or the proper certification, then when you see a warning sign underwater, it is better not to go past it. The signs are there for a reason. In cave diving, when something goes wrong, the difference between life and death can be only 2 or 3 minutes. This story reminds us of an important lesson. In cave diving, once an accident happens, the difference between survival and death can be only a matter of 2 or 3 minutes. That is why those warning signs are placed at the cave entrances and junctions. If your skills and certification are not yet at the proper level, it is safest not to go beyond them. The signs exist for a reason. That brings us to the end of this story. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.